Good morning. 9:01 a.m., October 26, checking audio. 9:01 a.m., October 26, checking. Got that. On a Wednesday, the year is 2022. How to start this episode? I don't know. What am I going to do here? Windows Daily number 83, how to make sense of all the numbers. This might be a very ill-advised subject for me to tackle live without very much preparation. Probably with very little preparation, if I'm going to be really upfront about it. The idea to do this subject came up yesterday with some comments in chat. And there's all these numbers to deal with. I think I might be able to call myself, how do you say this? The least confident, arrogant IT professional you might ever meet. Least confident, arrogant. How do those two go together? Well, okay, so I don't even know how to get this going. Yeah, Wintermute, when has that ever stopped me? Live without a net from Jim. Yeah. Okay, so what I'm going to do to introduce the subject is I'm going to go pull up the chat from yesterday's live stream and point out what gave me the idea to do this. And partially I was thinking that I could do this as a way of helping me get a better grasp on the numbers. And then I did a couple Google searches this morning. Can you call it numberology? No, that's not actually a word. Numerology? No, that's numbers is related to spirit world type stuff. The numbers impacting IT. Let's see if I can get back to the right place here. I can't pop out chat on a replay as far as I can tell. And let's see, it had to do with, upgraded Sheldon Ball on his iPad, upgraded to OS version 16.1 without bothering to do a backup. He's using the 5 gigahertz band, not the slower 2.5 gigahertz band. Well, it's actually 2.4 gigahertz, but that's an easy slip for anybody to make, including myself. So be clear about this. I'm not holding any of the mistakes against other people because it'll come back around to bite me, because I'll do it too. So if I go up further, then scroll to that 537 area where Sheldon's comment was. Home Wi-Fi, many things going on in the background, quality assurance, Wi-Fi connection. I want to get to a specific couple of comments in here. Here's one using the TP-Link AC1700. It doesn't support Wi-Fi v6. And in this chat, we were talking about Wi-Fi versions and we were talking about IP versions, IP v4 and IPv6. And as I got to thinking about later, there's so many more numbers to deal with. So then here's from William saying, I use all three bands, 2.4, 5, 6. So I saw that, oh, wait a minute, all I ever see is 2.4 gigahertz and 5 gigahertz. 6 gigahertz, no, that's not a thing, is it? Is he thinking of IPv6? But then here's the least confident part of me. I went and did a Google search on it this morning. This morning, actually, not yesterday, because yesterday I wasn't questioning myself. I'd say, no, he's wrong. It's 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. And I actually, when I first read that, I think I was reading it as 5.6 gigahertz. I said, no, that's not a thing. But he's got 3 frequencies there. So we're going to go look at those versions here in a moment. Okay, so among other things, I came up here to this list of wireless LAN. So here's the 2.4 gigahertz And then here's 5 gigahertz. I guess technically it's 4.9 through 5 gigahertz. And then down here is 6 gigahertz. I said, oh, wait a minute. I don't remember seeing that on any of the routers that I've configured. And it shows some information about where that is used. Then we come over here to Wi-Fi versions in Wikipedia again. There's lots of information in here, but they do get down to a chart over here showing the Wi-Fi versions. In the IP versions, let's see, am I getting this right? Am I showing? No, that's gigahertz versions. That's Wi-Fi versions. And then I haven't even brought up IP versions yet. IP versions list. IP versions list. There are 2 versions of IP, v4 and v6. And here's the Wikipedia. Now I'm going to being a little partial this morning to the Wikipedia because I typically have it laid out in an informative way. Now this is pretty short here. The common place that I see IPv4 and IPv6 is going into, looks like I gotta turn off my picture-in-picture there. Is right click on the network icon. If you're connected by Ethernet, it's going to look like a monitor. And if you're connected to Wi-Fi, it's going to look like a signal strength indicator. So right click on that, open network and internet settings, go to change adapter options. And then in this case, this is the Ethernet adapter that I'm connected with. Go to properties. That was right click on it and go to properties. Then here's the IPv4 and IPv6. One of the things that happens in technology is you might want to assume that the higher number is the better feature to use, the better whatever to use. Well, IPv6 was supposed to be that for us, but it really hasn't taken much of a foothold. So I oftentimes will just disable IPv6 on client computers, especially if I'm trying to troubleshoot some kind of a network connection problem. Now I have both of these selected, so if I come to a command prompt and to ipconfig, I should be able to see both addresses. So here's an IPv4 address, and actually I think I'm not seeing an IPv6 there. Oh yeah, it is there. Okay, here's the IPv6 address for my computer on my local area network. The main advantage that I'm aware of for IPv6 is we were running out of addresses on the IPv4 range, because you see this number, there's far fewer characters available than in an IPv6 number, which uses a lot more characters to accomplish addresses. So for worldwide purposes, for web surfing purposes, they wanted to come up with a strategy that would allow more addresses. But in the local area networks, everywhere that I have my clients, we're using IPv4 addresses. So far, we've got the Wi-Fi versions, we've got the IPv versions, and we've got the Wi-Fi signal strength versions of the 2.4. So there's three things of sets of numbers to deal with. Now then, let's get into Cat5 wiring for Ethernet, Cat5e Ethernet, Cat6, and there's others. That's the category of the actual Ethernet wire. And then let's get into CPU versions, and let's get into RAM version. Then let's get into M.2, and when is that NVMe, or when is that SATA? And there's all these different versions and numbers for us to understand and make sense of. And I find it a bit overwhelming and challenging. So I thought I'd try doing something, just maybe somewhat of an experiment to do this, to try to start getting a handle on it. Now I'm going to pop out chat and see what you guys have been saying now that you're understanding my my topic approach here. Zoom this up a little bit. I see things being talked about, versions and numbers and all. So then Jim says, let's not do this. I don't know if he's referring to somebody else, what somebody else said, or the comments that I'm making. My thoughts turn to Excel. Excel often rescues me when with this type of thing, when I'm trying to get hold of a area of knowledge that I'm just a little unsure of. Exploit. Okay, I'll catch up on that later. If you're talking about an exploit, sounds like you're on some other topic. So I'm going to try to start putting some thoughts and domain of knowledge into a spreadsheet. So there's the IPv4 to think of. There's IPv6. We've got a Wi-Fi version 6. Now my mind's starting to turn to mush with all this. I'll tell you what. These are the IP versions. IPv4, V6, V7, even V9, and I don't know where those are used. And then come back here to Wi-Fi, 4, 5, 6. Let's put in those numbers. I'm not going to try to cover everything. Now this one I put here, I'll just move it over one, Control X and then Control V, and put it in this field for Wi-Fi V4. And let's see that I tell you what, my brain's going to turn to mush again. This may be something that I have to start preparing. But the problem is, one of the problems here, I don't have a lot of time to devote to trying to get all these numbers down better in my head. When I start to work or need to work with a client on any particular issue, I'm normally pretty fine to go right to where I need to go. Sometimes I'll do a Google search to go refresh my knowledge in a particular area. Now this area about Wi-Fi version and IP versions and gigahertz version on a Wi-Fi communication, I feel pretty comfortable with that. But as you see here, when I start talking it through or trying to give some summary statements about it, there's a lot. There's a lot to it. And I think there's a lot more that I haven't even got into yet. Do you have any more subjects that you're giving me in chat along these lines? Wi-Fi 7, Wi-Fi V6, I see. Tough call because Wi-Fi 6 sure has some fantastic speeds. Now, here's one thing that I thought was worth mentioning. Now let's get back to this over here. Here are the 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. Tony, when Tony Wallow was working with his iPad yesterday, he gave me some more email communications and text communications, and he's got his problem fixed. But one of the things that he said was that he said that he tried all the suggestions I had and it didn't work, and then he had implied that he's worked with his internet service provider and with Apple, and somehow through all that it's working and it's fixed. But he wasn't really sure how it got fixed. And at one point he said that when he connected through 2.4 gigahertz network, it worked fine. And I had this sense there that maybe was he thinking that that's a disadvantage from the 5 gigahertz. Well, on an iPad, I don't think so. Because the difference between 2.4 and 5 gigahertz, I will often prefer 2.4 gigahertz. Because when you understand how those radio transmissions work, the 2.4 gigahertz will typically work a longer distance away from your Wi-Fi router, but it won't be as fast in capability as the 5 gigahertz. The 5 gigahertz can run faster, but not be as far away from the router. Now, what are you doing on an iPad that would matter? The 2.4 gigahertz is just going to be completely fine for streaming video, for instance, receiving video. And I think even for sending, for doing a live stream, you'd be fine on 2.4 gigahertz. I think if you're doing a large file transfer, copy from one computer to another, you'd be able to see the difference. I think if you do a speed test on the internet and you have a very fast internet connection service at your location, that you would be able to see the difference. So I was thinking I can probably demonstrate that here with the various computers and Wi-Fi setups that I have here. But I'm not quite set up to do that right now. So I did want to make that comment. 2.4 gigahertz for Wi-Fi is just fine unless you're needing to do large file transfers and care about that. And it can give you stronger signal strength. All right, where am I trying to get with this? What I had in mind here for this spreadsheet is to give different types of protocols or technologies, and then in the rows underneath, populate some information about those. Let's see. Let's go up here for 2.4 gigahertz and 5.0 gigahertz. Then there's also 6 gigahertz, but I haven't seen that on a router. I don't set up a lot of new Wi-Fi routers. When I go set up a Wi-Fi router, there'll be a 2.4 gigahertz configuration section where typically I will put a different Wi-Fi name that actually indicates which speed it is. And I'm just looking. Oh yeah, here I have it on Baby Beast. So here I'll bring up Baby Beast. Turn off the picture in picture, and here there's a BETS and there's a BETS 5G. So that's the 5G network, and this one's a 2.4 gigahertz network. They could have different passcodes, or you could set them up with the same passcode if you so chose to. So then coming back to this, the 2.4 gigahertz, I would say longer distance. And then for the 5 gigahertz, the advantage there would be faster speed. Something to be careful about when you say faster speed, though, is it just, are you only going to see that in a speed test? Or is it actually going to matter to what the person is doing? Okay, then another thing we come up with is 10 base T. We have 10 base T at 10 gigabits. I think that's a lowercase b. And 10 base T at 100 gigabits. And 10 base T at 1000, which is a gigabit. 1 gig. All right. Now let's go select all of these columns and make them all wider. So the 10 base T is at 10 gigabits, and then 100 gigabits, and 1000 gigabits. And those could all be using the same Ethernet cable if you have the highest that's required of these. If you have a lower Ethernet cable, I think I want to say it's Cat 5, that would be limited to 10 gigabits. But then even if you had a Cat 6E on 10 gigabit, which you don't need that for 10 gigabits, so I really shouldn't put that there, right? I think it's Cat 6E on the 1 gigabit. Do we call it 10 base T or do we call it 1000 base T? No, it's 10 base T 1 gigabit. I think I might be saying that wrong. This is where I tell you what, it's been a while since I've dealt with those specifications, and I might have been saying that wrong right there. In fact, you've probably been telling me that in chat already. But I'm getting to a point here. I'm trying to make a point. You can be a competent IT technician and get foggy on some of this, on some of the stuff. And then when you need to go actually address it, you might have to refresh your knowledge base a little bit, because it's a very, very broad, wide field. When you're dealing with speeds of Ethernet, it's dependent upon the router and the switches you have. So you got to be sure that your router is up to snuff and your switches are up to snuff. In some cases, even the connectors that you're using, you have to be using the right connectors. So let's see what you're saying in chat now. Cheat sheets, sure. Well, I'll go. I don't carry cheat sheets around. I don't carry those with me, what he said, what Rand said, because it's too seldom that I need them. Whenever I need something like that, Google is my friend, not physical sheets. I don't carry them around. Cat 5e and higher required for 1 gigabits per second. Cat 5 limited to 100 megabits per second. Yeah, that's all making sense. Cat 3, you can buy it cheap nowadays. Well, the reason for that, and hello, Catherine. So I'm not sure if I'm going to go populate the rest of what I'm trying to get at here. It might be sufficient for me to say that, hey, there's a lot of details with what we have to deal with in IT, and it's very easy for somebody to make a mistake in what they might say here or there, both on YouTube and in face-to-face work. I guess one of the things I'm saying is don't be too harsh on somebody when they say something wrong, because you can say something wrong yourself. As a pilot, when I go up flying around with an instructor for my biannual flight review, there were occasions when the flight instructor said something wrong, and I'd question him on it, and he'd say, "Oh yeah, you're right." Ken Stout said something on his show the other night. I think it was "oops." He just said "oops." That's not a good thing to say in what he was working on. He was saying, but it's a little more significant when your pilot says "oops," right? Gary says here, say it wrong, but don't order it wrong. Yeah, that's something that I'll do. Is I'll when I go to place an order, I check things around a bit, or sometimes I don't, and I regret it. Like that episode that I did recently about moving the chip from one toner cartridge to another, and I saw later, I noticed somebody's comment asking, why do you have to move the chip? Well, it is required because when you put a toner cartridge in this HP printer, it reads the chip to validate that there's toner cartridge there, and it gets information about that toner cartridge. Well, the OEM brand, the off-brand, the generic brand toner cartridges don't have access to that chip because it's proprietary, it's patented. HP doesn't give that information out. That is a way that they're trying to protect their money. They want you to buy the cartridges from them. So yeah, it's required to move that chip. All right. I knew as I was approaching today's session that I had no idea how it was actually going to come out when I start talking live and trying to put this subject out on the table. The subject isn't that I don't feel confident enough about all these different technologies and abbreviations and numbers. That's not the point I'm trying to bring out. The point I'm trying to bring out is you can be a competent technician without having a rock solid knowledge of all of those things. Having an education and awareness and knowledge of what you might not be completely correct on, or you might need to refresh on when you're going to do a particular job, the recognition that you need to go do some Google searches and then refresh your mind on these things, or have a conversation with someone else that might be fresher on it. But be careful, because that other person might think they are recollecting it better than they do. I've had plenty of times where I'm sure that I know what I'm doing on a particular task, but yet I understand that I don't know what I don't know. And that's why I went and Google searched that the comment that was saying he was using 6 gigahertz on Wi-Fi frequency. I thought, I didn't think 6 gigahertz was a thing. I thought it was just 2.4 and 5.0. And right now, I still don't know where is 6.0. Does my Wi-Fi router have 6.0? Yeah, I don't know. Jim, pretty much all the computer knowledge I have is by the seat of my pants, extremely little professional training. I'm right there with you, Jim. I did get some credentials near the beginning of my career, but I do not have current credentials. And every time that I've gone to look at the practice tests for various different credentials that I could get, I've seen that, man, I'm going to have to go study up on a whole bunch of stuff that I never actually need in the work that I do. And the work that I do, I very rarely need to deal with just this subject area that I'm talking about today, with Wi-Fi and IP versions and cable versions. Yeah, I do some of that, but I feel my knowledge level is well enough in those areas. And so I don't worry about that. I might have some things missing. Yeah, Jim, he says I've never taken the A+ exam. That's one of the exams that I went and looked at. Also some of the Microsoft exams for networking and such. And in every case, I found there was 80-90% of what I had to study up on and give them the right answers, their answers that they want from the book, are just not relevant to my work. And my clients never ask me about my qualifications, my certificates. Just, you don't have to get the certificates if you can get the work without having the certificates. If you want to apply to a job for a large company, you're going to have the certificates. And for instance, that's what Alex is going through these days. He's got his certificates, and he's trying to find the work with an employer. Lawn Dog, A+ wasn't an issue. For those who don't know, A+ is I'm going to say a general broad computer knowledge certificate. But I still went to school to learn many other things. Plus, many years ago, places hiring want some kind of schooling and certificates. But also, as all y'all know, that's not always the case with the employer. Sometimes you can just get the job because showing your skills. Now, I did work for an employer in the computer industry. I was doing computer training and on-site service. I did not have credentials. I rose to a point in that company where I actually did interview candidates for working for the company that I was employed by. And we would get applicants who had certificates, and would get applicants who did not have certificates. More than half of our hires were not certificated, not college degrees, not computer certificates, but they had the passion for the industry. They had the hunger and thirst to understand more, meaning outside of work hours, they were still going to be learning things and digging into things. Some of the applicants that we had, especially with college degrees, it was very clear that they felt and thought and believed that their college degree in computer technology qualified them for the job, and they didn't need to do anything outside of business hours to keep up or to advance their knowledge. And we would test them on the things that the work we were actually doing with our clients. just a verbal question and answer, they weren't doing very well. So Ken Stout, is Ken Stout on the around? I'm about to send the group off to you because I think I've covered what I want to cover. I don't see Ken in the chat room. I'm going to go back and read over the rest of your messages after I end the live stream here, but I think I am ready to end this. I don't know if I'm going to pursue any further on this topic. I think I've gotten what I wanted to get out onto the table, and we'll see what happens next. So there's my email address. I'm particularly interested if you'd like to set up a remote support session, or I can have you on Zoom to help try to fix any issue that you're having with your computer, or if you just want to send me a question, a technical topic that I might be able to include in another video. I don't typically respond to emails on a one-on-one, support type thing, because that's not really what my channel's about. And with that said, I hope you all have a great day. I hope that was useful. Catch you later. Goodbye.